What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Erica, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Sunday. I hope you're having an amazing day thus far. We are now in daylight savings time. We have actually sprung forward an hour. Of course, I would have loved to have had my hour because it was actually lightening up, anyway, but hey, we can't complain. I know a lot of people love this time because it doesn't get dark until about 8 o'clock. So they love it, love it, love it. It really doesn't matter to me. Like I said, I would prefer to have my hour back and just let it lighten up on its own, but that's neither here nor there. We are here and we have to go on with business as usual. So let's get started. I'm here to do my weekly review of Love and Marriage Huntsville. Yes, they are back. I don't know whether this is the second half or the third half of season 10, but we're back. This is episode 17 and it was called The Streets Are Talking. Now, let me just say this, guys. I have a lot of notes here. So I will have to refer back to my notes because it was a good episode. There are a lot of details going on, so I'll go back and forth to my notes. But anyway, let's get started. So of course it opens up with flashbacks of, all the drama from last year, and then also what's going to happen this year. So I guess they're trying to just get us prepared for what is to come. But the opening scene of the show, or I would say the first opening scene or main scene, was with Latricia and Latisha. Latricia actually went over to Latisha's house, and I guess they were going to do, have a little girl talk. So they get there, and Latisha, they're talking and everything. First and foremost, we find out very early. Well, she asked Latricia how she was doing. Latricia said she's doing fine. Latisha said she heard about Latricia's son Xavier in his accident. Xavier was actually in a car wreck. It looks as though he totaled the car. They did show some pictures of it. We are just grateful that he is still alive and well. You can even see Latricia's tension as she was talking about it. But yes, Xavier was in an accident, and like I said, he totaled his car. So hopefully he's doing extremely well to this day. Like I said, I don't know when they actually filmed it, but we did know that. So they talked about that first, and then they went on. Latisha asked Latricia, had she, spoken with Nell since her 80s party. Latricia said no. Latisha said she felt like her and Nell sort of reached a middle ground at the party, but she still doesn't know where she stands with Destiny. We'll get more into Latisha and Destiny later, but Latricia is, number one, these girls aren't really friends. So right now we see Latisha filming a lot with Latricia simply because she's not friends with Destiny. She's not friends with Nell. And of course, Latisha and Kimmi are sister-in-law. So, they're kind of like running out of, I guess you would say, cast members. So it's not like a huge cast. So like I said, they're filming together. But Latricia, to me, really doesn't want to be in the middle of any drama with these ladies. So when she kind of said that, Latricia was just saying, yeah, she understood because, of course, it was a whole lot going on. But again, Latricia did not give too much of her personal opinion. And we know Latricia doesn't say too much about anything. So that's just her personality as we're getting to know her better. So again, like I said, she did not give Latisha a whole lot of insight, or she did not comment too much. So that was kind of boring. But then they went on to talk about, Latisha did ask Latricia. Of course, Latisha was sort of leading the conversation. So Latisha asked Latricia how her and Ken were doing. Of course, Latricia said they're still having some issues. She said that Ken was actually mad because of the simple fact that he was told that Latricia was out with someone else. Someone sent him a message saying that she was out with someone else. And it sort of blew up. It really got out of control. He was very, very angry about that. Latisha said she also heard there was a lady who came to her and said that Ken was actually, getting in all these women's DMs. And so, the rumor mill has begun. It's getting out of control. It's spinning out of control. And one of the things that I didn't like is that Latisha didn't say, look, Marcel and I have gone through that. We've had rumors about our marriage in our relationship for years. Please, don't let it get to your head. You got to put the noise behind you. Latisha wasn't really encouraging to her. It was more or less like she was sort of relishing in the fact that, there were rumors about someone else. So I really didn't like that about Tisha. I was like, okay, Tisha, that's a little yucky. To me, I felt like you should have been a little more encouraging to Latricia. But again, like I said, it just shows the fact that misery loves company, and you're actually glad that they're focusing on someone else now more so than you. So the conversation continued on. Latricia really didn't say anything about it. She just said, Latricia knows that they're having issues, and she did tell Latisha, hey, Ken went to move in with Will, or he went to stay with Will. And if you can't see my notes, guys, I'm going to try to show you. Right over here in this corner, I said bad sign, because we all know that Will is a person who has, he's like Martell. These ideologies, and what I say, these philosophies, and how he views women and relationships, or the lack thereof. It's just a lot about Will that is just very off-putting, especially when it comes to women. We went through that with Martell for years, and now Will, who is somewhat of a friend of the show, we're seeing the same thing, and how he talked about Destiny, how he talked to Destiny, how he talked about his past relationships, not ever really wanting to get married or have a serious relationship with the children, the mother of his children, or the mothers of his children, says a lot about him. So Ken going to stay with Will, that's his best friend, but we know that Will is definitely a man who's up to no good, and he's going to do exactly what he wants to do, and he certainly would encourage Ken to kind of do the same thing. So that's not good. But anyway, that was the end of that scene. So we move on to Chris and Nell. They were having coffee. We find out that Chris is no longer working. His real estate license was revoked. So he can no longer practice real estate right now. We also find out that Nell's father now lives with them. And I wrote in my notes that Nell, well, he says a huge chunk of their money comes from the real estate. So we also know, so right now Chris is in a bad spot, but we also find out that Nell is taking care of her father. I wrote in my notes, is Nell an only child, or, does she have siblings? Because it seems like Nell is always taking on the bulk of the responsibilities in her family. Nell, told us even a couple of seasons ago that she took care of her mom, and that her mom lived with them. She took care of her mom up until her mom's passing, and now it seems like she's doing the same thing with her father. We know that Nell is a person that is very overwhelmed. She has been yelling and screaming and cussing and fussing for a couple of seasons now about how she can't put any more on her plate, how she can't take much more, how she's stressed out. She's the one that has to do everything. She's the one that has to pay for everything. So having to take care of her father, of course, is just another burden. Of course, when you love your parents, you may not look at it as such, but again, this is something I'm sure that will kind of weigh Nell down, especially now with the fact that Chris is not working. Chris, Nell said, you keep coming across, you're always so calm, and Chris doesn't stress outwardly. He says, just because I'm not going off or I'm not crying, that doesn't mean that I don't have stress. Chris says that he doesn't like to break down because, if the family sees him break down, it's kind of like, what will happen to the family if I'm not the strong one? So I also had a question, and I posed this question on Twitter. How long has Chris not been working? When did he actually, when was his real estate license actually revoked? Because to me, the way Chris was talking throughout the episode, it was almost as if it happened some time ago. I know last season we saw Martell and Destiny sit down with Chris. They were talking about doing some sort of deal, like a three-way deal, and with, some type of deal they were trying to close on. But I don't know how that worked out or if it ever came to fruition. But it seems like Chris, the way he's talking is not something recent. And like I said, I posed a question on Twitter last night, like, is this something recent or is this something that happened some time ago? Because Chris is sort of talking about the finances as if it's been going on for a while. Chris pretty much was the breadwinner. But I would think, and I'm just assuming, this is just my opinion, I'm not in their, their money or their finances, but just watching the show, the way Chris was talking, I naturally assumed that he would have some money saved up. Maybe if he had just made a deal prior to having his license revoked, maybe they could sort of live off of that money, or that could pay their bills for a while. Normally I was expecting for Chris to say, Nell, don't stress, don't worry. I have some savings. I have some money saved up. We'll be good for the next, few months. You don't even have to be concerned about that. By that time, I will find something else, or by then, maybe all the issues with my license will sort of be worked out. He didn't say that. Chris went to say or tell Nell that, yeah, we're going to have to dip into, we're going to have to rely on the daycare. We're going to have to rely on the cleaning business. And he also mentioned one other business. So which means that Chris has been down for some time, or maybe just what they have. I know they have several properties. Maybe their finances are just stretched a little bit because, they have so much going on. But to me, in my opinion, I kind of feel like maybe this has been going on for a while and Chris just hasn't said anything about it. And what do you guys think? Let me know if you feel the same way. I mean, do you feel like this is something new? We don't know how they filmed the show. They could have filmed this well over a year ago. I don't know when they had to sit down or film the scene with Martell and Destiny and Chris. But also, like I said, I just feel like it's something that's been going on for a while because Chris doesn't seem to be, although he doesn't outwardly stress, but he doesn't seem to be stressed about it. He seems to be more settled in this, as if whatever has happened some time ago. So like I said, guys, you let me know what you think about it. But I just thought, maybe why would Chris have to dip into other monies so quickly if it's something that just recently happened? I would think that he would have some money, sort of stored up or stacked up for in case something like this happened. But anyway, so Nell goes on to say, well, we're business partners, I should be able to help you in some sort of way, So Chris was like, well, you don't have a real estate license. So then Nell gets in her ego and says, well, I have all of these certifications, I have more certifications than you. Yeah, Nell, you probably have certifications in, early childhood education, things with the daycare and early childhood development and all of those things. But again, that's not real estate. You can have 20 certifications, but again, if you do not have a certification or you do not have a license in certain things, you cannot participate, or you cannot take over in that sense. And I thought that was really weird and kind of silly for Nell to think that she could take Chris's place and sort of practice real estate, knowing that she doesn't have a license. That's just like someone who says, I went to school and I studied, I got my Bachelor of Science degree in political science, and I also got a master's degree in international studies. Yeah, but you don't have a law degree. You didn't go to law school. You didn't get a law degree. You didn't pass the bar. How are you going to practice law, although you study pre-law, although you, like I said, you got a degree in all these other things? If you do not have the proper licensing, you cannot do that. So anyway, sometimes Nell, to me, like I said, Nell just talks sometimes just to hear herself talking. That's the way I look at Nell. I thought that was very silly of her, but Chris is very patient with her. He knows how she is, so he kind of lets her rant. So Nell said, well, look, you need to handle this because I don't know how much more I can take. And Nell is very emotional and she's going through a lot. So I said, look, Chris, get this worked out, because we don't need Nell to have another meltdown, breakdown. We don't need to see another family scene where she's yelling over the family dinner. So get it worked out. I did also write in my notes, Nell has to learn how to say no. I understand that, sometimes you want to help, but all the cussing and fussing, sometimes it's just best to say no, especially when you're stretched too thin and you don't really have it like that. Sure, your heart may be to help people thoughtful, but sometimes you have to decide or decipher whether it's a want or a need, and maybe it's just not meant for you to do it. Sometimes they may have to go to someone else. Sometimes they all may need to figure it out on their own, but you should kind of like at this point be a last resort, especially since you're always helping. So now learn how to say no. I think that's the lesson that you really need to learn just going forward, is to learn how to say no. So Maurice and Kimmi. Well, we know how last season ended with Maurice sort of hinting around that he may want a divorce. They were sitting in their backyard talking, and they were talking about therapy and, of course, their last conversation, which we all saw. Kimmi said that she wasn't happy about it. Maurice is saying, and I wrote down, Maurice is saying everything but what he really wants to say. He told Kimmi that he wants her to be happy. He told her that she's one of the greatest human beings that he's ever met in his life. Yeah, Maurice, but you're not saying that you love her, you're fighting for her, you're fighting for your marriage, and you want to be with her. You just want what you want, how you want it, when you want it. And Kimmi said the exact same thing. She said, basically, hey, we have some issues. I don't like everything that's going on. I'm not perfect, but I'm not at a place where I'm telling you that I want you to be happy with another woman. Maurice actually told Kimmi that he would be okay if she was happy. Maybe she needs to find somebody that she can be happy with. Well, if that doesn't sound like someone who wants out of their marriage, then I don't know what does. When a man men are very protective of you when they love and care about you. So any man who is telling you, hey, maybe you can find happiness with someone else, to me, that's a clear indication, a clear sign that basically they're already out the door. They have one foot out the door. To me, Maurice has already mentally and emotionally checked out of the relationship. Maurice is just used to talking. He loves to hear himself talk. He loves to prove himself right. So really, that was just really the gist of why he was even sort of conversing with her and saying things in the conversation, because he was determined that he was going to get her off his back. He was going to say something that would tickle her fancy, and then it would be all good. And so Kimmi said that she says that I told you, she says that there are issues, and then she says that Maurice is not thoughtful. That's what she was saying. So after she said all of that about not being perfect and all of that, she says that he's not a thoughtful guy. And we can see that. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Maurice is not a thoughtful man. Maurice is not a compassionate guy. There's a gentleness that comes with you. It's not just about your husband or your wife. When you are sort of a gentle person, you sort of handle things the same way because you're looking at it from a humanity standpoint as well. Maurice doesn't even do that. It's not just about Kimmi being his wife and him protecting her. Even the fact that she's a woman, even the fact that just her being a human being, I can see that he's very cold. He can be very dismissive. And that's what she was telling him. And then he started cracking jokes. So the jokes sort of threw her off, and of course, because he wanted to take the heat off of him, because what she was telling him was right, and he wasn't going to allow her to be right. So at that point, he couldn't really argue. He couldn't stand in front of the jury and plead his case because she was right. So he decided to crack jokes. So Kimmi didn't really like it. She kind of softened a little bit, but she really didn't like it. It was nothing but a distraction. But then he said, he shifted the conversation. Of course, he was going to find something profound to say, a profound response just to throw her off. And he did. He said, he you don't ask me for much. And, I really should do a better job of just, listening to you because, like I said, you're a great person. You're a great human being, and I can do better. I can do better. Well, Maurice, if you wanted to do better, you would have already done better, because the arguments that you and Kimmi are having are actually, they're old. There's nothing new that she's saying. You weren't thoughtful 4 or 5 seasons ago. You weren't thoughtful when she had the cancer and you wanted to have sex 2 and 3 times a day. You weren't thoughtful with so many things throughout your marriage. So even when she was helping you raise Monster, so obviously you're having the same arguments over and over and over again. So which means that you're just not a thoughtful person. And Kimmi, you need to admit to yourself, I married a jerk. You know, I married an a-hole, and that's all it is. So that was just like the gist of their conversation. Nothing really juicy there in a sense, or nothing that clicked that made you say Maurice is going to change, because he absolutely positively won't. So Destiny and her father were at bingo. Destiny was also there with someone who's like a godmother to her, or a second mother to her. Destiny told her father that she's going to actually meet up with all of her siblings. That is something that she wanted to do. She said when she was younger, you know, her mom just had the two children, her older brother and her. It appears that they said her late brother, so I'm assuming that her brother has passed away. But she said her brother Terrell was older than her, and she said they were very, very close. She said, you know, he taught her how to tie her shoes. She has very fond memories of Terrell, and she said she can remember the day that they came to get her, CPS came to get her, and they could not pry she and her brother apart. And that was very, very sad to hear. Her father said that he actually wanted to adopt Terrell because they were so close, but I think the grandmother said no. So I'm thinking it could have been Destiny's maternal grandmother, or I'm assuming that's who it was. But I also think that, you know, Destiny's father obviously wasn't Terrell's father, because if he were Terrell's father, then he would have been able to get both of them with no problem. So that was kind of sad to know that Destiny was separated from her brother, but it turned out well, because Destiny had a loving father. She also had another lady who was in her life. I can't remember the lady's name. She's an older lady, but she said, you know, I remember seeing you when I remember meeting you at 6 or 7 years old. You always treated me very well. You took care of me, and you treated me as if I was really one of your children. She told the lady that she loved her and appreciated her, and that was really, really nice. So she told her father during this process, she said, hey, would you like to go with me to see my mom? She said, I haven't seen my mom in 4 years. The last time I saw my mom, it was at my grandfather's funeral, and it wasn't good. The father said, no, he really does not want to. I think her mom's name is Rhonda Joe. He said he doesn't want to see Rhonda Joe that way. He said when he first met Rhonda, Rhonda was the type of woman who would pour your liquor down the sink. She wasn't an alcoholic. She wasn't a drug addict. And somewhere along the line, she turned. So Destiny is looking forward to meeting her other siblings and seeing her mom, but at the same time, she says she's very nervous about it because she doesn't know how it will turn out. So we will see. I'm sure we'll see that a little later, you know, or as time goes on throughout the season. Martell shows up in the car wash. We get a scene with Martell Holt. He says that he has a new business venture and a new relationship, and things are going well for him. Well, I wrote down in my notes, okay, how long have Martell and Ariane been together? Because from what I remember, he's been with Ariane for several years. He's been seeing her, whether he was cheating with her on Mel or not, you know, but he's been with her over the years. So what new relationship are you talking about? But we're talking about Martell Holt. So anyway, the guys show up. Chris and Ken actually show up, and I guess they're all like just chilling at the car wash or whatever while Martell is getting his car wash. I don't remember if Ken and Chris were getting their cars detailed or not. So anyway, Chris told the guys about his license being revoked. He seemed to have shared more with the guys other than, you know, what he shared with Nell. I'm sure Nell knows the truth, but in this particular scene, he told the guys that he was looking out. It was suspended because he was looking out for someone, and he felt like it was a setup. So there's sort of like an investigation going on right now, and he's saying hopefully, you know, things will, you know, turn around rather quickly. Martell was a little concerned. He joked around with him and said maybe you need to stop dancing on TikTok, but also making, you know, the videos where Chris dances. And I'm sure you guys have seen it. If you follow the Fletchers, Chris does like to dance, and he does make little videos. So Martell was joking with him, but then Martell said, well, you know, how are you going to feed your family? And Chris said, well, this is not the only thing that I do. And so they sort of moved on from that. You know, men sort of, they don't pry in one another's business too much. So that was pretty much the end of that conversation. Martell asked Ken about Latricia and how they were doing. Ken said that right now he needs peace. Ken and Latricia obviously are not in a good place. They haven't been for some time. And that's what Ken said. Ken said that he actually got an apartment. And, Martell and Chris were kind of shocked about it. So apparently he moved from Will, and then he just went and rented an apartment. Martell said Ken is getting his own place is great. And we know exactly why Martell is saying that. Martell is just a person who, again, he's another Maurice. These men, they have to have it exactly how they want it. Martell told Ken, you need to get you a younger woman, or a woman that has never been married or doesn't have a husband, and she has no kids. So of course that means you can dip in and out when you want. There will be no responsibilities. You don't have to take on anybody else's burden. You can just be free to see her and do her and treat her however you want. That's what I got, because we know how Martell is with his ideologies, his philosophies, as I said just about Will earlier. They all have that caveman thinking. They all have this thing where they feel like, a woman is just supposed to do whatever they say, how they say it, when they say it, whatever they want, she's supposed to just obey. And so, that was pretty much the gist of their conversation. Ken wasn't really into it that much. He says he wants it to work, but he is tired. He says that his generation, he says that he doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to be one of those men who just give up and move on. And so Chris chimed in and said, yeah, your generation doesn't. Well, I don't know how old Ken is. I'm assuming that Ken is 40 or in his early 40s, so I'm assuming that he's a millennial. We know that every generation is different, and then it's also too the way you were raised and how you were brought up. But if we're talking about generations, because of what Chris said, Chris is probably a Gen Xer too. I don't think he's definitely not a baby boomer, because he's not that old. But I will say that just because you stay together doesn't mean you're supposed to be together. We know that there are many, many couples who have been married for years upon years upon years, and they can't stand each other. They never had a connection. They never really liked each other. The only thing that they probably had in common was the fact that they had children, that either one of them wanted to start over. They had invested too much as far as building a life together, putting their money together. They now have a home together, or properties together. And they don't want to start over. I had an older woman to tell me that she married the wrong man. She had been miserable in her marriage for 50 years. She married the wrong man. She was in love with someone else, but she chose to be with this man because of certain things. The family and all these people encouraged her to do it, yet she was miserable. So for that, and I've never forgotten that this woman told me that. And so that's what I said. Sometimes it's not always good to stick it out, because this woman has gone her whole life not being happy and being in a marriage just because traditionally that's what you were supposed to do. She's been stuck in a marriage for years being unhappy and miserable. Not a good way to live. So Ken, if it's not meant for you and Latricia to be together, then you shouldn't be together. I know you want to fight, but maybe, sometimes you got to give up the fight. Maybe you're fighting for the wrong one or the wrong thing. So then we go to Kimmi and Tisha. That was the end of their little scene. We move on to Kimmi and Tisha. Kimmi and Tisha go out for Taco Tuesday. Kimmi says she also invited Destiny because she wants them to really just kind of get along. Kimmi says she likes Destiny, or whatever the case may be. Well, they sort of discuss business. Tisha told him that her and Marcel are sort of moving along with certain projects. There's one particular house that was built, or I think Marcel did the construction on, and now Tisha's going to come in and sort of do the other leg work for it by sort of putting it on the market. Doing all of like the creative side to it, like taking the pictures, making sure that it looks nice, all of those things so that they can get the house sold. Well, Kimmi told Tisha, hey, you're talking about this. Well, what happened is Tisha told Kimmi, yeah, I got to find someone to actually sell this property. And Kimmy's like, Hello, I'm your girl. You know, I'm your sister-in-law. You know that I sell properties. Like, why would you not ask me? Well, Tisha got caught in a pickle with that one. She really did not know how to recover that well from that one. And Tisha should have just said, Kimmi, I'm sorry. I didn't consider you. You're right. But she was trying to talk her way around it. And Kimmi was just like, okay, well, when things go wrong or whatever, it's all good. And, you know, I'll just ignore it and act like, you know, you never mentioned this to me ever, you know, before. So Destiny shows up. And while you know the tension was there, Destiny and Tisha both are people. Destiny is a person that doesn't like to show her emotion. Destiny, to me, and I've said this for years, if you've watched my reviews, Destiny is kind of like a softie. She knows how to put on a good face and be strong, but Destiny does not want there to be tension between her and Latisha. So when Destiny showed up, like I said, they haven't seen each other since the 80s party. So Kimmi asked Destiny how she was doing. She said, I haven't seen you since the 80s party. And Destiny said, you know, hey, you know, she didn't want to really sort of come around or be around because of the tension and everything that had happened between since they went to the winery. And when they went on the little girls trip, the little day trip to the winery, Destiny said she was really, really hurt by how, you know, Tisha treated her and some of the things that Latisha said. Well, Latisha said she's angry because she feels like Destiny has taken Nell's side. I don't believe that. Let me just interject right here my personal opinion. I said this last season. If you've been watching me for a while, I said that Destiny's going to have to make a choice. Unfortunately, when you are the friend in the middle, it does happen where you have to make a choice. You shouldn't have to, but it comes down to that, because especially when the two parties or the other two people are bickering and fighting and they're fighting each other, yeah, Destiny was going to have to pick a side, just like Destiny had to do that with Mel and Martell. You know, she was cool with Mel, but she's known Martell for a very long time, so it was very, very difficult for her to be in the middle. And ultimately, Mel, you know, got angry with Destiny because she felt like Destiny chose Martell over her. And now we see Tisha sort of doing the same thing. So Destiny asked Tisha straight up, like, how have I taken her side? You know, what did I say to you, or what have I done that would give you the impression that I have taken her side? Tisha says she can't remember, or she doesn't know exactly what Destiny's done. Well, that's not the right answer, because of the simple fact, if you are accusing someone of doing or acting a certain way or being a certain way towards you, then you should know 100% what it is that they're doing. For you to say you don't remember and you don't know exactly what it is, then you have no valid argument. So Kimmi was uncomfortable. You can tell she was sort of looking at them and going, you know, just listening to the conversation. Tisha said that, you know, she said we need to just kill this right now, because Destiny's going to tell the others that, you know, Kimmi, you and I are ganging up on her and stuff like that. So Destiny was like, no, I can hold my own. I'm cool. I don't have to tell anyone anything. You know, that's not what I'm about. So, Tisha said that I have a question for you. She was like, well, you have always said that you've known Martell longer and you've also known Nell longer. So to me, as I've been thinking about it, it feels like your loyalty lies with them. So you would definitely betray me for them because you've known them longer. So Destiny said, well, you know, do you feel that I've acted that way, although I've known them longer? Yeah, that's true. But do you feel that I've acted that way towards you? So Tisha said, no. Okay, again, Tisha, what is your argument? To me, you're just picking an argument with Destiny, because if Destiny hasn't said anything, done anything, she hasn't offended you in any type of way, then Tisha, why are you so angry? It's like you're acting like a child, like you really want Destiny to just say, denounce her relationship with Nell, denounce her relationship with Martell. I'm sure Destiny, she feels a certain way about them as well, and she tells them certain things too. But Tisha, it has nothing to do with you. Really and truly, Tisha, and what I don't like is that people are not honest about what's really going on. Latisha, really what what has gotten to you more than anything is your husband, Marcel. He got under your skin. I told you guys last season, and if you go back and look at my videos, you'll remember it, or if you've watched me, you'll remember me saying this. Marcel told Latisha, be careful of Destiny, because a friend to everyone is a friend to no one. That's what Marcel told Latisha. And what Marcel was afraid of, he did that because at that time, Marcel and Martell were beefing and they weren't talking. And Marcel was afraid that Martell was going to tell Destiny some of their secrets, and then Destiny would tell Latisha. So Marcel decided to plant a little seed in Tisha's head and make her believe that Destiny is a fake friend. And so now Latisha's looking at Destiny as a fake friend when Latisha has no proof that Destiny has ever said or done anything to betray their friendship. Latisha, you're very faulty in this. I don't like what you're doing. I see through you, and it's not cool, and you're going to lose another great friend by listening to your husband, who doesn't even really know Destiny himself. I understand that when you're a married couple, you get advice from your partner, and they can sort of, you have the pillow talk and you talk about certain things. But again, there was a reason why Marcel said that to you. And there's a reason why now you're looking at Destiny out the side of your eye. And it's only because of Marcel, not because of anything Destiny has done. That's fake. It's phony. And Tisha, we see your true colors. So it seems like you want to be messy this season. You want to come after everyone who has come after you. You want to stir the pot. You want to get, you want to get things going. You want people to feel the heat that you felt. And we see you. We know that's what you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, it will come back to bite you. And that was it. I just said at the end of my notes, I said I knew it would come to this. And here we are. So that was the end of the episode, guys. Like I said, they showed the other previews. It looks like a pretty good season. Like I said, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and let me know what you think. If you know someone that likes the show, but maybe they don't have access to the channel, or they just haven't watched the episode and they're really too busy to watch it, please share my video with them. I would love that. I would really appreciate that too, because in that way we can sort of get the conversation going and everything like that. Again, leave me a comment. I know that's not everyone's thing, but hey, I love to communicate with some of you guys. I know we're all over the world. We're all in different places, but hey, if you just want to say hey, I'll say hey right back. So let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Did you think it was a good episode? How do you think this season is going to turn out? Do you think that by the end of the season, Ken and Latricia will call it quits? Or do you think they'll still be, trying to work things out? How do you feel about Nell and Chris? Do you feel like Chris withheld some information from Nell and he's been going through this for a while? Or do you feel like, hey, this is something that just happened to come up? Do you feel like, like I said, do you feel like Chris really told his wife the truth about everything? How do you feel about Latisha and Destiny? They're facing off right now. Whose side are you on? Do you feel like, are you team Destiny or are you team Latisha on this? Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the next video. Of course, I will be doing Married to Medicine, so if you're interested in the Married to Medicine review, I will have that up for you tomorrow morning, probably midday tomorrow. So it comes on tonight at 8 p.m. So I will have that video up for you tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.